Let's do it.
Well, good morning. Today I'm joined by Jackie Handy, and Jackie's going to be coming to pre-inclusion, so I thought I'd like to introduce her to you all. So hi, Jackie.
Hi, Joe. Thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to the event.
Yeah,
Really
so we met each other first, was it last October, at a Professional Speaking Association conference, didn't we?
We did, yeah, the Inspire conference, yeah. And yeah, I think we just had a little conversation, didn't we, a couple of
Yeah,
times, because there was about 350 people there and
yeah,
lots of breakout sessions, so there wasn't that much time to talk, but we've kept in touch kind of
yeah.
periodic since. And
And
kept
didn't you take part in, was it Speaker Factor, sort of like a prize for one of the best speakers, that sort of thing, was it? Is that what you did?
That's right. Yeah, so they have in the Professional Speaking Association, they have a competition every year for emerging speakers. And so you can only join into that competition if you're in your first year of membership,
Okay,
which is why
yeah.
I took advantage of that. And yeah, you have to basically create and deliver a 5-minute presentation on a subject of your choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's tough actually, because when you're kind of confined and disciplined to just 5 minutes, you know, it's harder than you think. But
Yeah.
I used it really as an opportunity to, I suppose, for the first time, talk very openly about my situation and, you know, my upbringing and something that I'm really passionate about, and that is kind of the negativity that comes from using labels and discriminating. And, you know, I was a bit apprehensive of how it would be received by the audience, but very, very pleasantly surprised that actually people wanted to know more about it. You know, they commended my courage, if you like, for talking about it. And that absolutely gave me the strength to say, do you know what? You know, I'm 46. I'm going to start talking about this more openly, because perhaps, you know, in some way I can effect change in the world as well. So, you know, that's another reason that I'm really thrilled to sort of be partaking in the True Inclusion event in July.
And didn't you also do a TEDx? Did you do a TEDx as well?
I did, yeah. Thanks for letting me plug. Yeah, I did. I did a TEDx last year in September. It's called The Exclusive Nature of Inclusion. Many of the messages that I discussed in my short Speaker Factor talk, I also deliver, but in much more depth in my TEDx. It's about 15 minutes long. Yeah, if anyone wants to watch it, I'd love you to see it. You'll get a bit more of a...
I'll put a link in the comments for you. Yeah,
Oh,
we'll do
yeah.
that. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you. That'd be lovely. Yeah, give me a thumbs up on YouTube, guys. It's always good.
So you've had a passion about inclusion for a long time. This is not just a flash in the pan overnight. This is really, really passionate about. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you know, growing up as someone who, like many people watching this, you know, realised they were different for one reason or another. I realised I was gay from an early age, and it was then, and actually I still think it is now, very difficult for many people to open up about that. I'd had a Catholic upbringing, which kind of just added something else into the mix that made it feel more difficult for me to kind of come out to my parents. I'm the only child in my family, so I didn't have a sibling to kind of you know, bounce off, if you like. It was a typical sorry mum, no grandkids kind of situation, you know. And I have to say that I actually didn't really come out. It was dragged out of me, not in a violent way, but, you know, my parents had recognised a change in my character, you know, around about 14, 15, and they approached me about it. They were very worried, thought it was, you know, maybe I was on drugs, maybe I was pregnant, maybe I was being abused. All these kind of things went through their mind. And then when they actually realised that, you know, as my dad said, you think you're queer, don't you? As I broke down and said, please don't throw me out the house, please don't stop loving me, and all those kind of things, he actually threw his arms around me and said, you know, is that all? And, you know, it's still quite emotional for me to think about that 30 odd years later. But the support actually and the unconditional love and acceptance I think that I got from them has really helped me on that journey. But do you know what, Joe? Nevertheless, you know, especially when we kind of hit corporate world. I mean, I was bullied at school. You know, lots of kids are, but that kind of stays with you, that stigma, into corporate life. And you know, I did all sorts. I was a holiday rep, which. To be fair, is if we want to talk about stereotypes, you know, it's quite a stereotypical environment for gay men, but less so lesbians, right? So I was pretty much in the closet in that time. That was for 4 years of my life, and then, like many recruitment consultants do, I kind of fell into recruitment once I'd got off the plane from being a rep, and so I joined as a recruitment consultant in one organisation, followed by another. And I decided that for various reasons, but mainly the fear of reprisal, the fear of being overlooked for promotion, the fear of gaining respect from my peers, I decided to pretty much stay in the closet for many years, actually, until I met my current partner, now wife, Shah, in 2007, 2008, just going into. And then I don't know, I just developed this strength perhaps from that partnership, that I just thought, you know, I was nearly 40. It's like, I am who I am. Maybe it's time to just go with it. And I have to say, I was quite well supported, and, you know, by my peers and friends. And of course, that unwavering support from my family is great. But what I think is interesting, and still very much goes on, is that when people don't know, even though they may have suspected, but when they don't know, there's so much, I think it's called casual discrimination, that goes on. You know, these kind of words or phrases or jokes made about something that actually is quite close to your heart. And, you know, I'm not going to try and say I'm perfect here. I've probably made jokes at others' expense over the years. You know, I don't think anybody can profess to be perfect, but I think it hits home much more. And I went into training in 2010, the end of, with the same company. I was now out and proud in work, and I became curious about this thing called NLP. Now, some people think it's all kind of mind games and hypnosis, and it isn't actually, but there's much more to NLP. And the bit that interested me was the fact that it's all about the way in which we consciously use language and the influence that our language has on ourselves and others around us. And I think that resonated so much because of what I've just told you, really. And so I made it a bit more of a mission to bring inclusion, if you like, and an understanding of the power of language into the recruitment arena that I was working in before going freelance 6 years ago. So I now work with other organisations with recruitment, but also, you know, there's
a very broad kind of experience across recruitment, NLP, and you just one-to-one mentoring with people as well at the moment, do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do a lot of leadership training for global leadership organisations, and so I like to now weave as much as possible, because, you know, inclusion's part of everything, isn't it? I weave D&I and belonging, that sense of belonging in every sense of that word, into the work that I do with individuals. Of course, you know, that often means we have to take into account cultural differences and varying belief systems, as well as, you know, that neurodiversity that we're familiar with as well. So, but I think that there's often in intra-inclusion, we're talking about, and it's a wonderful platform, by the way, and I've seen that a lot of people are talking about really advanced stuff, as many people would see, in relation to the topic of inclusion, and that's brilliant. I also was thinking, you know, I wonder, because I still, when I train and work with recruiters, I still hear about them being asked to discriminate, and some of them don't recognize it as discrimination. And so I conducted a survey. I sent out a survey monkey. Some of you might have seen it on the True Inclusion group, and it was just called "You Can't Say That," and it was really simple, but just about the 9 protected characteristics, which we know is only a part of this, but it is a part that's important, and it's a nice place to start, isn't it?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, we've got to recognise that many people in those categories are discriminated at work, and this is the fundamental why the Act's there and why we need to think about it.
Why they're protected, right? It's why those characteristics are protected. And I was quite surprised. I mean, there was a part of me that was horrified at some of the naivety, and I prefer to call it naivety because I do. We don't know what we don't know. So if nobody's told you and nobody's explained it, then why wouldn't you know? But I was also really sad to see that there were about 50%. I mean, it was 200 people that responded. So it's not like the whole global population or anything, but as a cross section of people that replied, 50% of them had never had any kind of training on diversity and inclusion, protected characteristics, or unconscious bias. Yeah. So you and I would see that as the basic fundamentals to I guess, getting this ball rolling in society. So it's kind of prompted me to say, look.
I also find that many companies, they're using e-learning. Well, I'm not saying e-learning in all cases is bad, but sometimes things like training is literally click, 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 click. Oh, got that wrong. Click, click, try again. And people are almost like learning to pass rather than learning to learn, which is sometimes there are very many more modern e-learning tools out there that are more immersive and more focused with video and other metrics, but I still see some really basic e-learning that's just
absolutely
purpose.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right, Joe. E-learning can serve a purpose, but I think in a topic as broad, actually, as this one,
it's in the heart. It's not about. It's about here. Yeah,
it is, and without getting too deep, I absolutely believe there's that mind-body connection, and so it's in the heart and in the head. It's all intertwined, and I think. Dare I say it, I think a lot of the problems, if we want to say, in society right now are born from a lack of understanding. And, it's almost like, and I'm sure you get this too, the token lesbian talks about diversity, the token trans person talks about diversity, and it's us that are banging the drum. And it's, and by the way, I know that's not exclusively the case, but it's often the case. And I think that there are, let's say the traditional white, straight individual would perhaps think, well, I don't know what to say. And I want to try and work with society to say, look, that's okay. Why would you know? But ask and somebody will tell you. And
that's it. It's building up ally groups.
Absolutely.
I often say, if we're trying to get gender equality to 50-50, which is the right thing to do, obviously, then men need to be part of that conversation. Otherwise, we end up with this echo chamber of just women talking about it. And when we talk about ethnicity, we need to make sure that everybody's in the room having a conversation. Yes, have some safe space. There are people who want to have safe space conversations, but there must be a forum where everyone can talk about it.
You're so right, and can talk about it without fear of, if I say something wrong, people.
Safe space, anxiety.
Absolutely.
I know, and people don't have the language. That's often the problem. I think you were just saying is if I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how to say this, if I upset somebody, what am I going to do? I don't want to. So people disengage rather than engage.
That's right.
Don't they? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and it is hard. I mean, I'm in a couple of categories. And we're all in some categories.
Just good luck. Yeah.
In the box. Yeah. But and I recognise that yes, when you approach somebody or you meet with somebody that is different to you in whatever way, visibly, psychologically, whatever, then there are challenges there because. Of course, I'm just like everybody else, as you will be. We want to create our lives and build rapport with people because we're kind of hardwired to do that. So education and communication for me is absolutely the key. That's the key.
So I mean, this is I think the power of the True Events and what I want to propagate with True Inclusion is to have this kind of fireside coffee chats, sit under the tree, pull up a rug, have a chat, have a conversation because. We don't want this big A-list celebrities on stage, disconnected from the audience. No one ever gets to talk. we want the conversations to occur. So you've said you're going to host a track for us, which is absolutely amazing. So what's your what's your title? What's the book? Where people see you?
It is about, how can we get the basics out there?
Yeah.
I'll think of a catchier title for it for you, Joe. But that's really what it is. And, just like we've talked about here, e-learning, it's not really the most effective way to get this out. But actually, neither is just simply classroom training of any sort. So, what I think the power of the community at the event of True Inclusion can bring is that creativity and innovation that we know is just so powerful to say, right, I've got my thoughts on what we can do to move the agenda forward, from a basic standpoint even. But, what are other people doing, trying? What have they thought about? Just to get this baseline awareness of, the protected characteristics, for instance, we know there's direct, there's indirect, there's by association. It's grayer than grey, grayer than 50 Shades. And, I think how do we kind of add some colour and some clarity into that piece of education to get
inclusion by default, isn't it? Rather than inclusion being a bolt-on, it's part of the leadership model, it's part of the organisation.
Absolutely, and I'm a big fan of things like psychological safety, of course, so that yes, our business leaders have to take as much ownership as the people on the shop floor, if you like. And that in itself can be difficult, just cutting through those biases that we almost, dare I say, I don't want to get too soapboxy because I want us to, that's what the track is all about. Yeah. But my thoughts are that
the conversation in advance. No, yeah,
but I do think there's something about, we use this term unconscious bias a lot, and it's coined, of course, but is that an excuse? Now, is it becoming more of an excuse? And should we look at, yes, conscious inclusion we know is also a term, but, should we talk about conscious biases a little bit more? We know that we're hardwired to have biases, but now we're creating more awareness. So maybe we should stop using an excuse, if you like, of unconscious. So
I talk about conscious exclusion. We know we're doing it, and just be aware we're doing it, because actually we do make conscious decisions. I don't like you. Yeah, no, you can't come in. No, it is.
I read a quote, and I'm trying to remember it all now, because if you quote a quote, it needs to be right? But it's words to the effect of, if you do not proactively seek to include, then you absolutely are excluding. It's
completely,
there's something more.
Well, somebody is being excluded by not consciously including everybody. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. So, this really is the opportunity to say, if you're watching this and you're coming to the True Inclusion event, hope you are, please come along and get involved in that track, because I'd love you in the discussion to share and embrace new ideas.
Okay, so if people want to connect with you ahead of the event, how do they find you on Twitter or LinkedIn or website?
Sure, okay. So LinkedIn, I do a lot on LinkedIn, so it's Jackie Handy as in useful. I've used that for 47 years nearly. So at least people remember me. You can find my company is actually called Runway Global. So my Twitter handle is @Runway Global. You can find me on Instagram, the same Runway Global. And what else am I on? I've got a YouTube channel as well, actually, which is also Runway Global. Okay. So you'll see my videos, and of course we'll put the TEDx link below. So.
Okay, we'll put your social media details below as well. So if people want to connect with you, join in, start getting the conversation.
Absolutely. And, if there's any particular questions that any of you want to kind of raise in that track, that you can send me ahead of time, that, let's get everybody involved. I'm hosting it, but I'm certainly not running it. So, this is for everybody to get involved.
It's about facilitated, get the conversation out going. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
True Inclusion, 2nd of July. The Union Jack Club, Sandal Street, opposite Waterloo Station. I look forward to seeing you there. About 9:30 for registration. It's going to be a great day. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, is that all good?
Cool.
I'll turn
Yeah,
it.
we're still recording.
I'll clip that. I'll sort that out. 20 minutes.